Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, October 13th. It's another big week for releases. Got about 500 albums coming out. I got 14 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you go check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that we put together every week, and the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you've enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So like I said in the intro, huge week for releases. There's a bunch of stuff coming out this week. You got a bunch of the Rhino Rocktober stuff, which I'm not going to go over in the video today. I did a whole video a couple of weeks back about all the Rocktober stuff that's coming out. So go back and check that out. There's also a bunch of indie exclusive stuff that's coming out this week also. So the same thing I did last week where I pinned a bunch of links down in the comments. I'm going to do the same thing this week. So make sure you go down in the comments and check that out. I'll pin probably, last week it was like 60 or 70 albums I had. This week's probably a little less than that, probably about 50 or so albums I'll put down in the comments below. But if there's something I don't talk about on the show today, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up. And like always, like I said, if you're unable to find these in your local brick and mortar stores, there's links down below in the comments. You can go grab these online. The first release is an album that I really hoped we would see. I wasn't sure how soon we would see it though. But this is Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon, released in 1973. It was their 8th studio album. It's going to run you about $28 online. This is the 50th anniversary release of this album. So this was the album that was part of the 50th anniversary box set that came out earlier this year. So when the box set came out, I did a whole video about it, and because I do have the box set, but I even said in that video that if and when they did release a standalone version, I think this is the definitive version to have of this great album. Sounds absolutely fantastic. It's going to be a great price, too. It's like 28 to $30 is what I've seen it going for online for pre-sales. But it's newly remastered by James Guthrie of the... I know my friends make fun of me. My wife makes fun of me about how many copies of The Dark Side of the Moon I have. Because I've got like the 79 MoFi and the 2016 remaster and the 30th anniversary pressing. And when I sat down and compared all these, I really thought, or really feel like the 50th anniversary is the best sounding version, especially for the price you can get it for. So I was really happy to see this come out as a standalone release this week. And then you've also got the self-titled debut album from The Living End getting reissued. This came out back in 1998. It's on red vinyl. It's going to run you about $25 online. In my opinion, it's one of the best punk albums of the late part of the 90s. Just an incredible album. A 10 out of 10 punk album for me. And it's so there's two different versions of this going to be available. There's a 1 LP version, that's what's coming out this week. And then there's also going to be a 2 LP version that, at least here in the US, has been pushed back until the end of the year. The 2 LP version now has a live album that's included with it also. So, I don't know. I might wait to grab that 2 LP release, or I might just grab the 1 LP release when it comes out this week. I do have a music on vinyl pressing from a couple years back also, so I'd like to pick this up, especially for $25 is what's going to be going for online, and kind of see how it compares to the MOV release. The next album is one that I've seen kind of conflicting release dates about. I've seen it listed for this week on some websites. I've also seen it listed for next week on other websites. So a little bit of confusion there on when this is exactly coming out, but it's an album I'm looking forward to. This is the new album from Crosses, Goodnight, God Bless, I Love You, Delete. It's their second studio album. There's also a Black Ice indie exclusive release that's going to be available. It's going to run about $36 online. If you're not familiar with Crosses, this is a side project of Deftones frontman Chino Moreno. And it's kind of this like really interesting kind of like, it's industrial, but it's also like hard rock, post-punk, electronic, all these different elements kind of brought into it. And it's I really enjoyed their first album, even though I wasn't like a huge fan of it. I thought it was a really good album, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking out the new one whenever it gets released, either this week or next week. And then you've also got the new EP from Boygenius coming out this week also. This is The Rest. Boygenius, they're a super group that formed their debut album that came out, was it last year that their debut album came out? Or maybe it was the beginning part of this year. Huge release when it came out. bunch of people really loved it. I was kind of lukewarm on it. I thought it was an okay album, but I'm definitely looking forward to checking the new album out also. But so you got Julian Baker, Phoebe Bridges, and Lucy Dacus. That's the super group that formed Boygenius. There's 4 songs on here. It's going to run you about $22 online. It's definitely one I'll put on my list to stream this week. There's a couple of great Black Sabbath reissues coming out this week. The first one, this is Reunion. First release in 1998. It's a triple LP release. It's going to run you about $40 online. And there's 2 different versions of this. There's a standard black version, and then there's a purple smoke version that was up on Black Sabbath's website for a little while, and then all those pre-orders sold out. But it's also going to be the indie exclusive release. So if you want colored vinyl, you should be able to pick it up from your local brick and mortar stores. And it's also available on a couple of record stores' websites also. I know I'll put a link down below if you want to grab it from one of my local stores. So there's 16 tracks across 3 LPs. It's all newly remastered from the original tapes. This album was recorded during the 1997 reunion tour, and it does a great job, I think, at least in my opinion, of really capturing the greatness of that band. Even almost 30 years into their career, they're still putting together great live sets, and it's one of my favorite live albums, at least from the last 25 years or so. And the interesting thing about this album was, in 2000, Black Sabbath won their first Grammy Award, and it was because of the track Iron Man off of this album. So, it's one worth checking out if you don't want to grab a copy of it on vinyl. Their CD versions are going to be available. It's also going to be available on streaming also. It's been available for a long time. Like I said, came out in 1998. It's a great live set though. So you got that one coming out this week, and then you've got Ultimate Collection. This was released in 2016. It's a double LP. It's going to run you a little bit more. It's going to run you about $48 online. So this is 17 tracks across 2 LPs. The way the story goes is all these tracks were handpicked by the band. I don't really know if that's real or not, or if that's just kind of a marketing ploy that the label put together for it. But I think it does a great job of not only picking, of course, the big tracks from Black Sabbath, but there's also some, I don't want to say deeper cuts, but there's some songs you wouldn't necessarily think of right away when it comes to Black Sabbath. I would say they're deep-ish kind of cuts that they included on there, but it's a great one. If you're, maybe just a casual Black Sabbath fan and you're okay with greatest hits compilations, it might be a good one to grab if you can get it for maybe on sale somewhere. You got the deluxe edition of To the Faithful Departed coming out this week. This was released in 1996. It was the Cranberries' third studio album. This is a 2 LP deluxe edition. It's going to run you about $34 online. It was a huge album when it came out. It's the band's highest charting album here in the U.S. It's not the highest selling album. Their second album has it beat by 10 million copies, but it was huge when it was released. Number 4 in the Billboard charts in the U.S. It sold over 6 million copies worldwide. So it's a highly successful album. So this deluxe edition includes 3 previously unreleased demos. Free to Decide and Salvation were the 2 huge tracks off this album when it was released. Kind of going back through, even though their second album sold a lot more, had a couple bigger tracks on it, I think from beginning to end, this is probably my favorite Cranberries album. It's a good one to go back through and stream if you haven't listened to it in a while. And then really for the next 3 releases, if you're a Matchbox 20 fan and you bought the box set and you've been holding on to it because you want to sell it for more money later on down the line, right now is a good time to sell it, because the next 3 albums that are being released, these were the big part of that box set that had never been available on vinyl before. They're all coming out this week. There's standard pressings of it that I'm going to talk about now, and then there's also Rhino Rocktober releases that are going to be on colored vinyl. So there's a couple of different versions of these albums that are going to be available this week. But this is the first one here. This is Mad Season. Matchbox 20's second studio album is released in 2000. Like I said, I think the Rhino Rocktober version is on blue vinyl, I think. But it's a double LP release. It's going to run about $30. While it wasn't as successful as their debut album, I think it's a little bit more experimental. It's probably a little bit more of a cohesive album. I think it's, at least in my opinion, I think in some ways it's better than the album that came out before. Their debut album's a good album, but I think some of the stuff they did on Mad Season, I think just worked a little bit better. You also got More Than You Think You Are coming out this week. This was released in 2002, Matchbox 20's third studio album. Like I said with the last one, there's also a Rocktober release coming out. I don't remember the color for Rocktober though. I think it might be clear. I'm not 100% sure though. But this is going to be a 2 LP release. Going to run you about $30 online. This has 5 bonus tracks on here, though. There's 1 acoustic track and 4 live tracks are all included on here. Definitely more of a hard rock kind of sound than their first couple of albums. Even though really don't want to call this hard rock for a Matchbox 20 album. There's definitely harder elements there, and I think that's why they kind of lost some fans with this album, and it didn't sell quite as well as those first couple of albums, but I still think it's a great album. And actually, it was nominated for Best Rock Album for the Grammys that year, too. So you got that one coming out. And then you've also got North, which was their fourth studio album. This one's going to be on the Rocktober release for this one's on white vinyl. I do know that. It's going to run into about $21 online. It's more of a return to the earlier sound for Matchbox 20. So it's more the like pop rock kind of sound from the first couple of albums. I think Matchbox 20 is one of those bands that really hasn't released a bad album. North is one I haven't listened to in a long time. I do need to go back and check it out, though. There's a great jazz album coming out this week. This is Sorcerer by Miles Davis, released in 1967. It was his third of 6 albums he would do with this quintet. It's going to run you about $40 online. A little bit of a darker kind of sound than a lot of people expected from Miles Davis. But this is a great album, man. It's one that it was probably up until within the last couple of years that I finally sat down and listened to this album, and I absolutely love it. I don't have a copy of it on vinyl. Definitely going to grab it this week. Just a great lineup on this album, though. You got Wayne Shorter on here, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Tony Williams, which Tony Williams, in my opinion, one of the most underrated jazz drummers of the 60s and early 70s. Just so many great albums he was a part of, and this is definitely one of them. So like I said, that's a great one to look at this week. And then you got Sleep Token, This Place Will Become Your Tomb. This was released in 2012. It was the band's second album. This is going to be on purple vinyl. It's going to be about $35 online. They're an interesting band. I think I love their debut album, which was Sundowning. And then this album is a little bit different. I think they expanded their sound a little bit. It might not be as good as their debut album. If you're just now getting into Sleep Token, I'd definitely go back and check out Sundowning first. But there's like, it's like a blend of like metal and pop. There's some like progressive stuff on here. Like I said, very interesting. Has this whole like kind of ghost persona with the whole masks and all that stuff and all the unnamed people in the band. It's an interesting, they're an interesting band to go back through and check out. If you're a metal fan, I don't think they're I guess I should kind of backtrack a little bit. If you're somebody who likes Ghost, you probably like Sleep Token, even though they're a little bit more popular. If you're a metal fan and you hate Ghost for the popular elements in their music, you probably won't like Sleep Token. But they're definitely a band to go back through and check out. I was surprised at how much I've enjoyed their music so far. And then rounding out the list this week, a couple of really interesting albums that I think have largely kind of flown under the radar for a couple of decades. But the first one, this is Dinosaur Jr., Where You Been, released in 1993. It was their 5th studio album, 30th anniversary release, going to run you about $37 online. There's 2 different versions going to be available. There's a blue version, and then there's a splatter version. Both of them are going to be about the same price. This was the album that kind of put Dinosaur Jr. on the map. I know Without a Sound, which was their next album, was like the big album that everyone knows, but I think this is a little bit better of an album than anything else that Dinosaur Jr. did in their career. Even though I was never a big fan of the band, but they're a really interesting band. Like they had like some classic rock elements too. There was some punk elements. There was alternative and indie and lo-fi stuff, and it's just a really kind of interesting blending that I think they were a little bit more influential, at least in the 90s, than I think a lot of people would give them credit for. But this is the album that really kind of, like I said, put them on the map. It's a good one to check out. If you don't buy it, it's a good one to at least stream and check out. And then the last one on the list is Enough's Enough, Animals with Human Intelligence. Released in 1993, it was their 3rd studio album. Going to be on red and blue splatter vinyl. It's going to be about $30 online. I would say like their first 2 albums, which their self-titled debut album, and then Strength, I think, was their second album, and then Tweaked, I think, was the name of their 5th album. Those are like the only 3 albums I've ever listened to from the band. I really like the first 2 albums. Tweaked, was a little bit different, but the first 2 albums are really good if you go back through and check them out. I don't know why I never really listened to this album, but I'll at least put on my list to stream this week. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. I think it's going to be a great week for releases. A bunch of stuff, great stuff coming out. The Dark Side of the Moon release. I'm definitely going to grab that Living End release, even though I've already got the MOV version of it. I'd like to get a new copy of the new remastered one and kind of compare it. And, I'll probably grab Reunion. I'll probably grab those 3 Matchbox 20 albums also, maybe a couple other ones. I don't know. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to picking up. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.